Welcome to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, where we are helping people avoid the burdens of preventable disease. By using evidence-based lifestyle tools to unlock each person's intrinsic healing ability, we're going to be supporting healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy individuals. Making your own food and moving every day vigorously can help you gain freedom from health debt. We can prove it. Thank you for being with us in Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor with Miles Hassell, MD. This has been our first year of podcasting, and so we really appreciate your tolerance because we're new to this. We're hearing from listeners like you, and some of them have really exciting stories about how they've transformed their health by making some good choices. Here's a couple of them. We just had a letter from a listener who was scheduled for knee replacement surgery. She's somebody who cleans houses. She's otherwise pretty healthy, follows a pretty good diet, has a pretty good weight control, but had a really beaten up knee. She's in her 60s, and she was scheduled for knee replacement for bone-on-bone arthritis. She said, "Do I really need to have a knee replacement, or is my body capable of regenerating enough to make me not need the knee replacement?" And when we think about our designed bodies and their ability and its ability to recover, regenerate, renew, then it's an idea worth exploring. And so she explored that idea. She used the ideas that we talked about in our osteoarthritis podcast. She kept moving, and she added some gelatin, glucosamine, MSM, niacinamide, all things that we talked about in our osteoarthritis podcast. And about 6 weeks later, noticed that her knee, she'd been continuing working during this time, and she was no longer in pain. Now, during this time, she hadn't been taking pain medicines, which I think is actually an important aspect of this, because when you don't take pain medicine, then your body learns how to accommodate whatever it is that's dysfunctional. So now she's at about 8 weeks, and she's thinking she may not need that knee replacement. Only time will tell as we go forward whether she will be able to completely avoid a knee replacement or not. But it brings to mind another case we had of a gentleman who was 80 years old. He was told he needed a hip replacement. He did the same kinds of things, and he was able to avoid that hip replacement for the next 7 years. So don't forget your body's ability to fix itself. Another person we heard about was a young mother who was trying to lose her pregnancy weight. So she asked a friend about weight loss tips and was told she could eat no fruit except for grapefruit, no dairy, a pretty restrictive diet that wasn't all that much fun for her. In all seriousness, probably just eating meat and vegetables probably is a pretty successful weight loss approach for most people. Well, our approach is a little different. So we recommended a whole food omnivorous diet, cooking food at home, keeping active. Of course, being a new mother, it's pretty hard not to be active, but anyway. And so she looked around and at our recommendations, and she realized there was one other thing, and that is she had to get rid of her husband's collection of trash food. Those candy bars and things that he had in his cupboard that she was just drifting by and enjoying every now and then. And with doing all that, she gained a lot of self-confidence in her ability to control her choices. And she's losing about half a pound or a pound per week, even across Thanksgiving. So it was just a handful of choices, not a severe limitation to her diet, and maintaining her activity that has allowed her to make to achieve her weight loss goals without being miserable. She, like many others, didn't need to go to a doctor. They just needed to get their life in order, to make some better choices, and realize that the power to make this change was in their hands. Didn't need a professional. Another interesting case was a gentleman with seronegative rheumatoid arthritis. So this is a rheumatoid arthritis type of picture that didn't actually have any markers of rheumatoid arthritis in their blood work. And it's not all that uncommon a disorder. And he was told that he needed a lot of really powerful immunosuppressive drugs in order to be comfortable. He was miserable most days of the week, miserable with pain, swelling, fatigue. So he adopted a whole food approach, got rid of the junk food out of his diet, started exercising multiple times per day. He's a teacher at a school, including he would sneak into the gym during the day and jump rope for a little bit. And now, on without any immunosuppressive medications, he has very few bad days, and almost every day is a good day. His family is happier. His family is eating a lot better, because when one person in the family eats better, pretty much everybody else has to eat better too. They got rid of the junk out of their diet, so the children are healthier. So it's a win-win-win, all at essentially no cost, except for the cost of chopping a lot of vegetables. So those are just a couple of stories from items we discussed in our podcast. We also could tell you stories about people who have reversed their type 2 diabetes, which is probably realistic in maybe 70% or more of people with type 2 diabetes, probably close to 100% if they start early when they first get the diagnosis. If you go back over our podcast, we talked a lot about critical thinking approaches. We talked about the prevalence of kind of overdiagnosis in our community and the role of lifestyle factors in reducing that. The role of immunity. So, for example, immunity underlies almost all healthcare problems in a sense, if you choose to look at it that way. And you could say and use the word inflammation if you wanted as well. But these are factors that affect whether you get heart attacks and strokes, whether you get cancer, whether you get a common cold. So if you think about the choices that you make that make a difference as to whether you get a common cold or flu by watching our immunity podcast, you're not only going to be reducing your risk of those common miserable, unpleasant short-term illnesses, you're also probably going to be taking steps that reduce miserable long-term illnesses like heart disease and stroke and diabetes and high blood pressure and the need for medications for all of those things. So think in terms of when you address your immunity, that you're addressing just about every other aspect of your health as well, both short-term and long-term. When you think about that, you're also addressing inflammatory factors. So the greatest anti-inflammatory factors in your diet are not supplements, are not medicines. The greatest anti-inflammatory factors in your control are not medicines. They're not nutritional supplements. They're your choices of food. They're your choice of activity and your choices of whether you control your waistline or not. During these podcasts, we hope that you felt encouraged to be your own chef, to realize that no matter how simple the food you make, it's going to be better than anything else anybody else makes for you. It's also going to be cheaper than anybody else makes for you. And it's going to have greater effect on your long-term health than almost anything else you can do except for physical activity every day. And we'd like to, especially for the healthcare professionals thinking about this and listening to us, when you're teaching your patients about overall health and achieving good health, don't forget you're the best example they're going to see. And therefore, be the best example that they're going to see. Make your own food. Have the same kind of exercise pattern that you expect them to follow. We talked about the fact that none of this needs to be too onerous. Now, obviously, it's work. But for example, you don't need to exercise 45 minutes a day necessarily. Start with 1 minute 3 times a day of something that makes you short of breath. You're going to be amazed at the differences that'll make. And maybe those 1 minute episodes will turn into 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 minute episodes. But if you start with 1 minute 3 times a day, you're going to be a different person at 90 years old than if you hadn't done that. And we talk about different things you can do for simple problems like heartburn. You don't need to be on chronic medications in most cases for heartburn. You can follow just the standard whole food diet, the exercise, probiotic foods, and in most cases, your heartburn is going to go away as well. Ditto for high blood pressure. Almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody who eats better, stays fit, and loses their excessive weight around the middle will no longer need high blood pressure medications. Isn't that something you'd want? So don't pretend to be a victim of Big Pharma. First of all, make it so that you don't need Big Pharma by eating well, exercising every day, controlling your waistline, and so on. At the same time, remember that Big Pharma is there for you when you really need them. For that case of lymphoma, for that oddball high blood pressure caused by a congenital abnormality in your kidneys. What we don't want to see is a bunch of barriers to health that are artificial, that are caused by socio-political norms. So instead, just take good care of yourself. There was so much more we talked about this year. Coffee, tea, alcohol, holiday eating, making good choices in every aspect of your life. Thank you for listening, and thank you for any help you can give us, because our goal is to see the burden of preventable disease lifted everywhere.